I think it just evolved for me. I believed I couldn't race any longer, but I believed I could, you know, enjoy the sport and contribute a lot based on my learnings. And I also believe that because I had some ups and downs in my own racing career, I think I was a better team manager because of that. I had tremendous desire to be successful, but I also had empathy when riders were having difficulties or injuries. I could kind of understand from their point of view and try to provide good coaching and counsel, and used a lot of the training. I mean, I would train with the riders and push them hard. And
Yeah.
because of my knowledge about the motorcycle and setting up suspension and all that, I was also able to interpret what the riders were saying and share that with the engineers. So I think that background was very valuable to me in those periods. And Suzuki, we went from the worst team in the industry to the top team, the dominant team there in about 1980, 81, won virtually all the championships.
That's crazy. And I was looking at this. I mean, I don't know a ton about, race team management and stuff. And I'm sure whatever it is today, it's very sophisticated, but it sort of makes me think of like some of the, baseball managers that did play the game and they've gone into it. But it seemed like outside of just like being the like players coach and like, were there any kind of like streamlining or like what were you doing from a management standpoint to make the team successful? Because going from worst to best, it can't just be like you're hanging out with the boys and being like, if you didn't do well today, let's get a beer tonight. Like there was obviously some strategy too, right?
For sure. I think there's lots of discipline involved to have a successful team. I mean, you've been around, you've been to the races and seen, you never see a messy garage for a winning team, right? Things are in an order. There's a methodical way of doing everything, the way the car or the motorcycle is taken apart and put back together. There's very high accountability. Usually, one person is responsible for one thing. So it's kind of creating very high expectations, having a disciplined process. And then, you can't be buddies with everybody. It's business. And if you want to win, you got to treat it like business. And by the way, it's a 7-day-a-week business. You don't get to take the weekends off. That's when you race. And, Monday through Friday, you're doing everything you can to get the riders ready, the bikes ready, the equipment ready, the spare parts, and very, very organized. And small things, the guys used to make fun of me, but we were the first team in the pits every Sunday morning. First ones there. Guess what? We got the best parking spot. We were closest to the entrance to the track. We could see where all the information was. All those little things add together to make a pretty big difference. And,
where did you learn that approach though? Was that something like you were kind of raised like and taught, or?
I think early on, as I said, Mr. Dye sent me to Sweden. I also was lucky enough to have a mentor called Rolf Tublin. He was 3-time world champion. And I learned a lot from Rolf. So I just tried to look at the very best guys and try to understand what is it that they're doing? Why are they the best? And kind of emulate them. And after you do that for a while, you start to connect the dots and you see the guys that struggle and you avoid what they're doing and try to emulate the top. And by the time I was a team manager, I had a lot of those experiences. So I was able to contribute them. And when the bikes weren't working, I was still able to ride and give feedback on the bikes and help with the development of the bikes too. So I think that was valuable.
I like what you said about the learning piece, and we're culturally, like when you were trying to learn from Ralph versus like another American rider, like it's kind of a weird thing when you're going and trying to learn from somebody and they're sort of going out of their way to help you out and stuff. Were European riders more willing to teach, or was it kind of observational, or like how did it differ from like American other riders? Because I wonder, like if you're racing NASCAR today and you're a young guy coming up and you go up to Kyle Busch and start asking him questions about the track, that's going to be met quite a bit differently.
Yeah.
And, you know, how was your experience with that?
Well, I think I was lucky because in those early days I rode for Husqvarna. Guys like Mr. Dye wanted to grow the sport, and they actually arranged to have a guy like Rolf Tiblin be available to us to be kind of like a coach and mentor. He trained with us physically, just like I later trained with the Suzuki riders. And so part of it was I was lucky enough to be with a team where the business people behind it saw what it could become and what a bigger business it could become in America in particular, because it was the largest potential market. And having a few experienced people around that were encouraged to help us, it was quite a bit different than, like you say, just walk up to one of the top guys and start asking questions that may not go so well.
Yeah.
And some people are more free with their time and advice, and I think it depends on your approach too. If you're, you know, if you can be an approachable person yourself, it may make others want to help you more.
Some of the people that are free with advice too, you don't necessarily want to
Want
follow that advice.
Yeah. Might not be the best, right?
So you go from this super successful race team and you go into the business side of things, which is, you know, another large dramatic change. Like, and you, sorry, I'm just looking at a couple of my notes here. Like, you worked your way up at Husky to VP of marketing.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, you didn't have a background in marketing at that point. How?
Well, I had been going to, so I actually started out, so those very early days, working on the motorcycles yourself, being around the factory mechanics, being in the factory and seeing the production, that all was very intriguing to me. I knew I wanted to be involved somehow. And years later, you know, that experience walking the floor in the plant, you know, served me well in the days when I worked at Polaris. I used to be on the plant floor weekly, walking around, talking to people, trying to figure out how we could make things better. But I had originally started out wanting to be a mechanical engineer. And at that time, two things happened. I had a professor that kind of coached me and said, Mark, at the rate you're going to school, because I was going in the evenings and on the weekends while I was working full time, it took a long time to finish my degree. He encouraged me to, he said, I think your aptitude is better for business. I would really encourage you. And you're going to have more varied opportunity in business. And so I switched my major, finished that up, went through my MBA program. And I did have a bachelor's degree in business with a marketing emphasis. So I had been studying marketing and then learning more about sales. Later, you know, the MBA helped me more with the general management. So I was going to school for almost 10 years while I was working full time. And today I still go to school. I go to about once a year, I go to Kellogg at Northwestern and take some executive education programs to continue to learn myself, but also because I'm a consultant now, I can learn things that I can share with my clients. So, but you probably got to start with a lifelong love for education and wanting to continue to learn and grow.